Icon. My intention is to stop after about 2.5 hours, perhaps about 11:30. If there is a natural break about that time, I wouldn't want to stop in the middle of a motion. I propose a half an hour lunch break, and so we would resume 30 minutes after, whenever we adjourn. Councillor Fluker.
As a matter of welfare, I mean, a half an hour hardly gives, unless of course luncheon's being provided by the council, which it's done in the past, but a half an hour does not give members time to go to the high street and collect their luncheon and bring it back here and eat it.
Okay, that's a fair point. I know some members have brought sustenance in with them. I'll extend that to an hour. Are members happy with that? An hour's break?
Yeah.
Thank you. I think I'll ask Mr. Dodson to explain perhaps how he's going to handle this morning's events. Mr. Dodson.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, there are a number of motions, as members know, and the detail on many of them is operational, whilst they are valid motions. We feel these operational matters need to be dealt with by the staff who manage those service areas. So we have a number of staff here today to come and give that detail and make sure that members have all of the background. So there will be some quite lengthy officer responses to some of these, but I think that's appropriate to make sure that all of the information that's required is shared to inform the member debate. So that will be the format that we're following. And also, I think there are a number of motions to which Rule 9 may apply because they relate to individual officers or identifiable posts within the structure. So I would request through you, Chairman, that we move those ones to the end so that we can go into confidential and deal with the others first. Richard, do you know the numbers of those ones for us to deal with? Thank you, Chairman.
Mr. Holmes, can we have how many and what they are, please?
Chairman, yes. So 10A motion 1, we believe Rule 9 would apply to that motion itself.
Yes.
Bear with me, I'm just working through my agenda. Uh, 10D, motion 3, we believe Rule 9 applies to that. And 10D motion 7 also.
How can we have two 10Ds? Or did you say E?
No, 10D motion 7.
7. So it's motion 1, motion 3 and motion 7.
Yes.
Under 10D.
Under 10D.
There are 8 motions under 10D.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Okay. My intention, therefore, would be to leave these motions to the end of the meeting. Okay. Right. So the first one, therefore, is Rule 9 one. Councillor Stamp.
Chairman, would you allow me just to say how disappointed I am that the number of councillors have been able to attend this meeting? Maybe motions haven't been always taken in the spirit that they're often submitted to this council. And I think it's a real shame. I understand the reason you gave for actually having this meeting at 10 o'clock in the morning, but let's hope it's not going to be a precedence. Otherwise, everybody who works were excluded to actually be elected chairman. And I know you're going to stop me, but I just want I want to express. Thank you, Chairman. I want to express my displeasure that we've got 15.
We got more than half the council.
Only just,
16,
Chairman.
16
only just, Chairman.
Members.
Only just. And the thing is, we've got valuable members that aren't present who could contribute to this. Thank you.
Okay.
I think I understand, but as I explained right at the start, this is unprecedented. And although we did discuss the possibility of doing this at the agenda meeting, it took the CLT quite a time to be able to arrange today's meeting, which is why the notice got shorter, which I am sorry for, but the intention was to give more notice. It will not be a precedent, but it is an unprecedented number of motions. At county, and I don't want to dwell on county matters, motions are not allowed on budget day. So it might be, as you as chairman of PGA might like to go away and look at how to deal with a surfeit of motions.
Did the leader say something?
Yeah, they did actually. I'd like to come in then.
Oh, right, okay, leader.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, well, I've already raised that point with officers, actually, and it is something perhaps could go through Council Mrs Stamp's committee, and indeed perhaps consideration being given as like county, it has a defined numbers of motions that can be put. County do it on a sort of proportionality regarding, I think, the parties on there. I'm not necessarily advocating that, but then it does have the motions as being, I believe, time limited and a certain time for each motion to be heard. So I'm just thinking that might be something we ought to give consideration to, and bearing in mind PGA has the constitution, I think that could be something that Councillor Fleming and Councillor Stamp may want to give thought to.
Okay, do you want to respond to that?
Yeah. I welcome the leader's input. We're not county, we're a district council.
Yes.
And also, the leader is well aware that since I was elected chairman of PG&A, I have constantly asked for meetings with the leader and the other chairs of the other committees of how to take this council forward. We've had one. So I'm more than happy to look at this, but I'd rather that this didn't start to go to some, can't say the word that comes to mind, match with the leader, but I'm more than happy to try and take it forward in my role if I am chairman of PG&A following May. Thank you.
It certainly does need some management rules on this. County do it, I think, on a time basis. But then outstanding motions are moved automatically to the next meeting. We couldn't, because we're evening meetings of 2.5, 3 hours, we couldn't actually do a time basis. Perhaps it wouldn't be practicable on such a short meeting, but that would be up to your committee to find an answer to that. Right, members, can we... Sorry?
Motion 2.
Can we move on to motion 2? Who was the proposer? Councillor Lagan. Would you like to set your motion?
I certainly would. Chairman, the motion, I'll make sure the motion, it's about the restrictions, isn't it? I don't want to get the wrong one.
Yes.
So the motion to council is that the council removes all restrictions on public access to meetings in the chamber, and if there are more members of the public attend and cannot be accommodated in the chamber, then the Northey room is made available for them to view the meeting on the screen. That's been done in the past. This is to be made in accordance with the requirements of the Equality Act and access requirements and any applicable health and safety requirements. Therefore, I propose this motion to council.
If I didn't say I will repeat that I will accept all motions as being duly moved and seconded. Is there an officer response, Mr. Dodson?
Point of order. Chairman, ordinarily under the rule of procedures 4, I think it's 4.3, Chairman, I think that you have to inform council whether you are going to hear the motion here and now or refer it to committee, and that has to be done in consultation with the leader. So could you just confirm that is the case,
That
Chairman?
is the case.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Dodson.
Sorry, Chairman. Yes.
Sorry, Mr.
Thank you.
Holmes.
Have Mrs. Green here this morning, who will take this motion for the officers.
Thank you. Mr. Gear? Was it? Did you say?
Mrs. Green.
Oh, Mrs. Green. Sorry, Mrs. Green.
Thank you, Chairman. So I am going to be taking members through this, the council's response to this motion. I have to my side Mr Baccarini, who's our health and safety specialist. He'll be here to assist with any queries that the council may have. So the background to the current assessment that we have of occupancy goes back to February 2022, when this matter was last considered by members. And at that time, the area that was designated for the public had a total area of 6 square metres, affording enough room for 2 people. And as members will remember, at that point, we did have the area to my right, members left, where we had recording equipment. So that prevented us being able to use that area, and as members will be aware, that has now been removed. Now, the view of officers is that the current approach that we have taken is in accordance with the council's resolution at that point. And the risk assessments were taken at that point, having regard to the relevant legislation, which is the Regulatory Reform Fire Safety Order 2005, the Management of Health and Safety at Work Regulations 1999, and the Building Act 2010. At that point, the reception area, as well as the Northey room, were used as an overflow area to accommodate the viewing of proceedings. Using the reception area in particular ensures equality of access and ease of access to muster points. The Regulatory Reform Fire Safety Order 2005 does place a number of broad responsibilities on the council to ensure, so far as is reasonably practicable, the safety of its employees with regards to fire. The general duty also extends to non-employees to ensure that it takes appropriate fire precautions to keep its premises safe. And various guidance documents exist, and the authority must have regard to those when setting out its measures. One particular aspect regarding fire safety concerns the occupancy of buildings, and the British Standard BS 9999 of 2017, which is the Fire Safety in Design, Management and Use of Building Code of Practice, and the Building Control Approved Document B, and the local government, the Communities and Local Government Fire Safety Guidance, Fire Safety in Small and Medium Places of Assembly, all provide recommendations on the number of occupants in relation to the space and the layout within buildings. The guidance is clear that when occupants are seated in this type of venue, such as a meeting or committee room, a minimum of 1 metre squared is required for each person. To calculate this, only available space can be included. Fixed parts of the building structure must be excluded. As I said at the start, when council last considered this matter, at that point in time, the area used by the public had that 6 metre square area. The approach that has been taken to date recognises that there are 2 distinct areas of the council chamber: the area for the public to view proceedings and the area for members and officers to conduct the business of the council. It's also considered appropriate to keep the 2 areas separate in order to segregate those who are unfamiliar with the building, i.e. the public, and those who would ordinarily be familiar with the layout of the building, such as members and officers. And that's for the purposes of fire marshals managing a fire evacuation. They'd be able to identify members that would be used to the fire evacuation process and members of the public that may be unfamiliar with the layout. The public area was previously assessed as 6 metres squared, but with the former streaming area now unoccupied, the same calculation of occupancy can be applied to the seat members of the public in that area. Using the approach we have previously used of that designated area being 1 person to 1 square metre means that we can have now a further 5 seats, which is the areas that we are now using. So in total, the current public viewing area can accommodate 6 members of the public, sorry, 11 members of the public. The total floor area of the council chamber has been assessed as approximately 78 square metres, and that includes both areas. when we have applied the calculation to the public area, it's only right that we use the same principles to reach a view about what is an acceptable level of occupancy for the rest of the council chamber, which is used by members and officers to conduct business. Using the same approach would result in 70. Using the same approach for the whole council chamber of 1 person to 1 square metre would mean that the whole room would be able to accommodate 78, less the 11 in the public area, which would mean the potential for the member area and officer area to accommodate 67.
Sorry, how many was that?
67.
67.
So that's the total floor area, which would equate to 78 occupants, minus the 11 that's been allocated for the public area, which means the officer and member area has the potential for 67 occupants.
We don't need.
So it's
Does this include the furniture? I mean, the furniture takes up space, Mrs. Green.
Chairman, the 78 is a total. That is the starting point for any calculation, Chairman. So 78 would be for the total chamber, the maximum that would be recommended. However, as I'll explain, there are reasons why that isn't an appropriate level.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's fine, Chairman. So on reaching a view on a safe level of occupancy, we have to consider the number of fire exits and the restricted width between the exit point, one of which is the top table here, and there is a restricted width. It is quite a narrow area. It is not the area that you would normally expect for a fire exit, and therefore there's also that's the first point. So there's also the fixed furniture and the restrictions of the overall layout. So whilst theoretically up to 67 people could occupy the member and officer area, the view reached is that the occupancy level in total for the member and officer area should be restricted to 44. So that means in total, the council chamber, whilst potentially could have 67 occupants, we're recommending that the maximum occupancy should be 55, which is 44 in the member and officer area and 11 for the members of the public. And that would be a number that would be acceptable should only one exit be available. We've also looked at the calculated travel distance between the escape stairwells, and that's deemed to be acceptable as well. It is possible that following the change of the floor level at the back of the chamber, that we could potentially extend the public seating area because there previously would have been physical barriers. So that is possible to extend the public seating area, but that would mean that the members of the public would then be encroaching on what historically would have been the area that members would have used. So it is possible to look at extending the area from where it is now, and essentially where those two chairs are. We could potentially look at extending the public area into that area, but that would be something we'd have to go back and have a look at. But when these assessments was done, it was based upon the original area that was designated for the public. So at the moment, the risk assessment does keep the public area into the same area that it was previously.
I don't want to interfere, but I think members have got the full understanding of the council chamber. The other issue is the Northey room. Would you like to address that?
Absolutely.
Mrs. Green,
So,
please.
The use of the Northey room, historically we have used either the reception area or the Northey room, but officers feel that the use of the reception area is a more acceptable overflow for the public, and that's for a number of reasons. That's due to the ease of access to enable us to meet the Equality Act. So if we had somebody with any mobility issues, it would be much easier for them to be able to access the ground floor. It's much easier to access the muster points. If there was a fire, that anybody in the northerly room, there would be much further to go. And again, if somebody had any mobility or disablement that meant that they couldn't use the stairs, that again would be more difficult to be able to manage. And there's also the ease of exit from the building. Again, the reception area has a very easy access out of the building. The maximum occupancy levels, taking into account the number of exits and the seating arrangements, would have to take account of the fact that we would, if there were more than 50 seats, there would have to be specific seating arrangements put in place. But the reception area does have a much larger area and it is easier to access. So in conclusion, it's the view of the Council's Health and Safety Officer that the number of occupants should be determined in accordance with the approach that we have set out, which has been informed by legislation and guidance. And we feel that currently the public area should have a maximum occupancy of 11, which could potentially be reviewed if members were minded to extend the public viewing area, and that the member and officer area should be restricted to 44. It's also our view that the reception area would be the most appropriate, safe and accessible area to accommodate an overflow for the public to view proceedings where the maximum occupancy levels of the public area of the council chamber have been met. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mrs. Green. Members, now what we'll do, we'll have members debate, then we'll come to the leader as the penultimate speaker, and then Councillor Lagan will sum up. Members. Councillor Swain.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Some interesting points there, particularly regarding fire exit difficulties. And particularly relating to the northerly room. And as far as the reception area is concerned, that although there was a large area in principle there, it would take a lot of reorganising to actually prepare for the possibility of so many members of the public to be wanting to attend, unless that can be sort of worked out for some part of it. But it means that 2 or 3 aspects of this motion as it stands are impractical. The one about all restrictions on public access, the reference to the northerly room. We've got a situation where it's maybe possible, as far as I see it, that the only realistic scope for an overflow is to use the reception area in some way, or part of it, but this would have implications for logistically in advance of any meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. We have used the reception room, the reception area before, and it has worked quite well. Councillor Stamp.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I just have clarity from Mrs. Green? She said at one stage 1 fire exit. Well, we've got 2 fire exits, and I just want to check my numbers because I wrote down what you were saying. And Chairman, if we actually looked at maybe chopping where Ms. Green stops, you'd have better access to go to that door, because in her presentation she said difficulty getting to that access, so that could surely be an option. I think we've all been here when we've had really contentious planning applications, and if I'm allowed to say, the AA dog rescue was one of them, where there was numerous people downstairs, upstairs and everywhere. And that was actually quite stressful. I'm going to disagree a little bit with my fellow councillor, Councillor Lagan here, because I do think we should be able to have access to the northerly room, because I think that from what residents have come back to me with the last planning meeting, and it's one I was away at and couldn't attend and wasn't allowed to speak, they felt disenfranchised from the council meeting, and they felt as though the council wasn't allowing them to come into the chamber to listen to the actual debate. So I think you've got an area that you're going to have to try and, if this motion is amended in any way, which I'm sure it will be, that the residents don't feel as though you or this council is stopping engagement from them and participation with the council. But other than that, if I could have an answer to that, I think we should go back to what we had before. There used to be 2 rows of chairs, and I know them well because I used to sit here for God knows how many years before I was elected, and I don't see why we can't go back to that. If it was safe then, why is it not safe now? Thank you, Chairman.
This council chamber was designed almost 50 years ago, and different health and safety regulations. In fact, there probably wasn't any health and safety regulations then. And it is starting to show that this council chamber is perhaps not fit for purpose. Well, I mean, we had, for example, Councillor Beale in a wheelchair last night, and it was very difficult for him to access this council chamber. If a future chairman is wheelchair bound, there's no way that they can get up here safely. So these are considerations, but I mean, I'm getting off the point. Yeah, Councillor Stilts. Oh, yeah, Mrs. Green.
Thank you, Chairman. It would be an option to be able to make the access to the exit easier. It wouldn't change some of the other concerns, which are around the fixed furniture, because there would still be issues in terms of being able to, for people to be able to move around. It's the fixed nature of the furniture. I don't know if Mr. Baccarini would like to add anything.
Yes, thanks, Sue. This is a concern, the width of the exit here. So the calculations we've done so far would allow, if we had only one exit, the capacity or the occupancy we've suggested, that would still be sufficient. Yes, you could modify the room. I don't doubt that. I've not considered that, but if that's something that you want us to consider, we can. We could chop this top table, yes, but there are restricted widths, say here, where members are sitting, and the fixed furniture doesn't help that. So we may have to then look at other configurations of the room to go to that occupancy.
And this exit here cannot be classified, in my view, as a fire exit. It may say that, but how does one get a pass to open the door? Well, I'm just saying that at the moment it cannot be accepted, in my view, as a fire exit, because you need a pass to get through it. And the fire exit should...
Chairman, it will automatically open.
It's got the brake closed.
Oh, I'm told it'll automatically open, but I don't know that. Councillor Stilts, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I actually agree with Councillor Stamp. I think that this room, you've got so much desk space, and you know, if that is an option of using that door as a fire exit, and those doors should automatically open if there is a fire anyway. I think that this room layout perhaps needs to be re-looked at, and I think we should be looking at how this could be reconfigured. I know it would cost this council money, but it's something that if we want to be letting members of the public in, if we want to have disabled people, councillors and public coming in, we should be looking at. The other thing is we have a lift for our disabled people. Where is it? How do they get to it? And then with the Northey room, there is actually 2 exits, but one of them is down the stairs. So if there were people in the Northey room, and we did open the Northey room up to public when we had the screen and the chairs in there, we had that problem then. So if there had been a fire, how were we going to get those people out? But we still opened it up to the public. So I think I agree with Councillor Stamp that we should be looking at this.
Any other member? Councillor Fluker?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. And can I apologise for my dress today, Chairman? I think it's the only time I've come to a council meeting or any meeting without wearing a tie, and it's because I've got to go to work shortly, which I feel might interfere with business. A couple of questions. This thing about fixed furniture. You know, I'm fairly up to speed with building regulations through my work, and we're working on a project at the moment where at the 12th hour the customers told us the furniture has to be fixed to prevent it falling over. So if there's a stampede from premises, then it can obviously interfere with access. My sort of overarching concern about all of this is, is, surely these premises have been inspected by Essex Farm Rescue Services. They are open to the public and they should be inspected. So my first question is, can you please give us an update from the last fire inspection so that members can understand what points they've highlighted of concern and whether or not we should really be operating in here. My feeling is we went through a process. We went, I can see there's two sides here. There's a health and safety one, and there's an access issue. And I think the Councillor Stilts is quite right in what she says. This is certainly not what I would call DDA compliant. Access is not DDA compliant, which means we are not DDA compliant. And I know that we've looked at various things. I can remember some grand projects of glassing over the top of the courtyard and using that as a breakout space. And doing all of that. Clearly that's not going to happen, even though we don't really have a timeline for what's happening with the Princess Road campus. But, maybe this is the time, instead of trying to stick yet another sticking plaster over this room and the relationship between this room and the Northey room, maybe we should be looking now towards having a breakout area within the council. And a classic example of that is, I think, off the top of my head, I think it's where Braintree have a multi-functioning room, put me right if I'm wrong. But, there's absolutely no reason why we couldn't actually use the area downstairs in reception. With a little bit of changing, it could work. So we just have portable tables, portable chairs, and we just all pitch up down there. It'd be quite simple to do it. But I agree with Councillor Stamp. I mean, I do know that members of the public feel totally disenfranchised at this council, and perhaps none other, because they can't come into the chamber. This is not something that's new. This has been going on a long, long time. But what generally disappoints me about this is the fact that, had this matter been referred to a committee, they would have had the benefit of reading Miss Green's report in advance, which would have been very, very helpful, and that would have helped them, Chairman, form a decision and move the thing forward. Because I think, really and truly, the thing that's come out of this is that we are not health and safety compliant, and we're certainly not DDA compliant. So that means every time you have a meeting here, officers and members are at risk.
Thank you.
What was the motion?
Mrs. Green, do you wish to comment? Before, I think that's the last speaker. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Mrs. Green, is there anything there you need to respond to?
I think probably just one thing, Chairman, is where we were talking about making changes to the council chamber area in terms of making the changes perhaps to make this area a bit easier to access. That's only going to change the occupancy levels for the member area. And as members have said this morning, that isn't actually going to increase the area that's available for the public to sit. It would just make it easier for to potentially have increased number of occupants for the member and officer area. Making these changes here wouldn't make any difference to the total numbers of spaces that would be available to the public, unless there, as members have suggested, changing the layout of the room completely. Sorry, Chairman, just one final thing, just to echo your comments that yes, we have very successfully used the reception area. We have already got TVs installed down there, so it's very easy for us to be able to accommodate that. And that wouldn't be a problem. We've never previously had any issues in terms of accommodating an overflowing reception area.
Mr. Holmes wishes to say something.
Thank you, Chairman. I think it would be helpful if officers provided a written statement then regarding the health and safety of this building and also the means of access. And my belief is that we have carried out reasonable adjustments for access. You'll see the levels change in the seating area below to allow a disability person with impediment to actually access the building. We do have a lift, but also we need to give you that reassurance around fire safety. So I think the best thing to do is that we issue that to members in writing, and I'll get Mr. Paccarini to do that.
The floor level changes in this chamber mean that I can't see people sitting in some places on the other rank. Mrs. Councillor Thompson.
Sorry, thank you, Chairman. Just to add a further complication, much depends on where this potential fire is, because it's right outside that door. If the leader's office went up in smoke, that would create enormous difficulties for anybody in the...
Like in it or not?
I wouldn't go there, I wouldn't go there, leader. But that instantly brings difficulties with getting anyone out of the noisy room in a hurry. Yeah. So, these things are never as straightforward as they sound.
Councillor Fleming.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask Ms Green, how many members of the public did we accommodate pre-COVID, pre these arrangements? And then also with the going back to the fire risk assessment, I just wanted to be assured that that's done every year and that the fire service have attended. I sort of had assumed that that was standard. Thank you.
Mrs Green?
I can't answer that here and now. I'd have to go back and check the previous assessments that were done as to the numbers that were previously accommodated. I would hazard a guess, probably not many more than they're currently here, but we can certainly come back to members on that. Regarding the fire safety, there is a regular inspection from a health and safety perspective, but in terms of the Fire Authority, I don't know if Mr Baccarini can answer that.
Yes, with regards to the Fire Authority, an approach has been made and they've been invited to attend and look at our fire precautions. One of the issues that will be raised will be this room. At the moment we're waiting a response from them. We're trying to get 2 visits, a familiarisation visit from the local station so the crews are aware of the layout of the building, and then also a fire safety officer who can help advise on our precautions.
Councillor Fleming, do you want to come back? Yes. Councillor Swain, you have spoken before.
I want to suggest an amendment.
I'll take that in a second then, after Mrs Fleming.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Ms Green. I'm a little bit surprised with that because we've just had the fire service just turn up and say, hand over your fire safety, your risk assessment documents there and then. Usually they ring, they give a couple of days notice. If you're not around, they can be quite insistent. So I am a little surprised that they've not been before, to be honest with you.
Councillor White.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. I'd just like to say that I think we could probably simplify this by just going back to the pre-COVID rules in line with health and safety and the fire service, because we used to accommodate a lot of people before. So my amendment is that we go back to the pre-COVID public protocols, and if there are overflows, we house them in the reception, pending any further updates in line with health and safety and fire and safety regulations.
That's an amendment. Is that seconded? That's seconded. This opens the opportunity to Councillor Fluker to respond to that amendment.
You're very kind for me, Chairman. I always rely on a point of clarity, and should we have lunch now? It's not that long a point of clarity. I wonder if the officer can confirm to Council what prompted him to call Essex Fire Service to carry out an inspection. And I think, from what I think Miss Green just said, it's some years since these premises have been inspected, which concerns me enormously because several premises that I'm involved in, we seem to have an inspection every, I think I can see Councillor Fleming nodding, almost every year. And this building is open to the public. So I'm enormously concerned that they haven't done one in the last 12 months. But perhaps, Mr Holmes, when you release that document to members, you could include a copy of the last fire inspection, please, not the next one.
I think that wasn't necessarily responding to the amendment, but I think Mr Holmes wishes to say something.
Yes, members, I'll clarify the position. My understanding is the fire service stopped regular inspections, and I've been the facilities manager before, and I remember those visits unannounced, 2 days' notice. But my understanding is they ceased doing that for this building. I don't know the background to that, but I will certainly double check in terms of the understanding. But if that is the case, obviously the council complete would cooperate with the fire service to do that. But my understanding is that wasn't a routine anymore for this building. But I will check that, and as I do that other update, I'll include that detail.
Right, Councillor Spenceley.
Can I just be clear? Have we had a wheelchair access assessment done for this chamber? Because I can't.
Yes, Mr. Holmes says yes.
Oh, okay.
Chairman, there have been adaptations to this room, probably in the last 2 years, and the split level flooring. I mean, there's two issues really. In terms of providing access for the public to get into the council chamber, there is a lift. It's accessed through the reception. It comes through the private offices. It's not convenient, but that's what happens. And you are able to access the chamber. You see the doors have got push buttons on to get you as far as the chamber. The more difficult challenge would be if there was a member with a disability, because that would seriously impact on how we could use this room in terms of access. So I think there's two parts to it really.
Councillor Shaughnessy.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, with regard to Councillor Beale last night, his wheelchair had to be lifted up the step. There is no sloping floor here. His wheelchair had to be lifted. I'd just like to.
I did make that point, I think, earlier on. Do you want to say something, Mr. Holmes?
I completely agree, members, and I think the only way to do this is to do a complete review of this room. The layout is very fixed. There's a lot of space here, but it is tied up with very fixed desks. So if we looked at a redesign of this room, we might be able to improve that accommodation. Also, there's been other suggestions of a location on the ground floor, which obviously would remove that altogether. So if members are asking us to do a review of the council chamber facilities, we could do that, but it would have to be a fairly detailed review to make sure we can include all the necessary requirements.
Councillor Morgan.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's really more of a question. I'm obviously still quite new to all this. Is the domestic arrangements for the council chamber and the council offices, does that not come under one of the members' committees? And if it doesn't, shouldn't a committee be formed to actually overlook that?
It's in the purview of SNR.
Right. Well, in that case, shouldn't SNR therefore look at this in some detail and produce a report for members?
That's
we're already looking at an amendment. Councillor Stevens.
Thank you, Chair. Just coming back to the wording of this motion, and we were talking about amendments. This is perhaps slightly pedantic, but to avoid us getting caught out with it later, it reads that the council removes all restrictions on public access to meetings in the chamber, and if there are more members of the public attend and cannot be accommodated, I think that should say, and if there are more members of the public attending than can be accommodated in the chamber. And I think that the numbers really need to be set out in here, because otherwise it's totally meaningless. I could get 100 people in here. Obviously, I'd be breaking the law. I know it goes on to talk about the requirements of the Equality Act and access requirements, but I don't think it talks about health and safety requirements. I think we need to state the numbers in here, and it says, and it should say, than can be accommodated. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lagan, can I ask you a question? Are you adverse to the proposed amendment?
As long as I can see what the proposed amendment, but I also want to. I want to raise a few comments as well.
Well, you will have that opportunity, but I just thought I don't.
Chair, could you have the amendment on the screen?
Is that possible, Miss Bird? I think it was simply to go back to pre-COVID
level, and then when we reach that number which is required in the chamber, then go down to the reception area.
If I might help, my amendment was to propose that we go back to the pre-COVID protocols for members of the public so they can attend, and if there is an overflow, that we accommodate them in the reception area. And I think I'd like to add on, pending a review of the council facilities by SNR, but I suspect this will take several months because obviously it's going to be quite a lengthy report. But I think in the interim, my amendment is what I'm proposing.
I think, Councillor Lagan, that do you disagree with that amendment? I think that more or less meets all your requirements.
My requirement was to look at numbers, but I wouldn't be adverse to that, Mr.
Okay.
Chair.
Leader, would you like the penultimate say on this before I come back to Councillor Lagan? Although, we've got to take Miss White's amendment first. Sorry.
Can I have clarity, Chairman? Is it going back to is it going to SNR then?
No, the amendment needs to be voted on, but I'm asking the leader if she wishes to respond to the motion and the amendment. Leader, do you wish to say anything?
Well, Chairman, happy to. Obviously, I think it's clear we've got certain regulations here which this council must be seen to abide by. Councillor White's put on the table, we go back to pre-COVID processes, and should then obviously the numbers be in excess of what is permitted in the chamber, that those residents are directed towards the reception area. I have to say, I think the reception area is a much better area for the overflow than the Northey room, if I'm frank, and I do remember a fairly recent meeting where it did cause tremendous problems within the Northey room, whereas that wouldn't have been so much exacerbated if it was the reception area, and which is a much more open area than being herded into the training room, and for the reasons we've all heard today rather than tonight, I was going to say. Councillor White's put on that amendment, and that seems quite reasonable. I mean, I do recall, I'm sure Mr Holmes will recall, that this chamber has been looked at before, and in terms, I remember quite recently, or well, perhaps my memory is wrong, where there was a move to talk about going downstairs for the council chamber. I forget why that didn't happen or appear, and of course Mr Holmes has indicated he's happy to do these reports and updates for all members, which I think is also a good move. Also, of course, and I can't go into all the details, and I don't want to start a debate off of this, but we're looking at certain areas, aspects regarding our offices and Princes Road anyway, so whether or not something comes into the equation. Regarding the fixed furniture here, I mean, I have seen authorities, but we've got to think there's costs applied to this, whereby they do have movable desks and chairs, and then that space can also be then used for a multitude of other things. I'm not necessarily advocating that, but that might be what Councillor White is sort of indicating, like asking for her committee. And Chairman, as a Chairman anyway, she could ask for that to be done. So Chairman, we do have to abide by the health and safety rules, and I'm not going to advocate anything different to that on behalf of this council, because that would be very, very irresponsible. And but I also think is very, very important, though, that we need to be mindful that our residents need to be aware of this. So we need to have this clearly advertised on our websites, wherever. And I think actually we ought to have suitable notices in specific areas in this council entrance or wherever, or coming up the stairs, so the members of the public are clear, and that they don't arrive and then come and not have the expectation that they could find themselves not being able to sit in the chamber. Thank you, Chairman.
I think we have a minor problem with actually using the words pre-COVID level, and I think Mr Holmes will explain.
I think the essential issue, members, we've done a risk assessment, we've done our calculations, that's the number it's given us. My suggestion is we do adopt that. We have 11 spaces for the public, we've said, we've got your members in your existing. We need to do some more work then in terms of what our options might be. But that would keep us legal, it will keep us safe in terms of occupancy levels. If indeed that can change after those reviews, that would be the safest way forward, I would suggest. So that would be my advice to you. We work with the risk assessment we have, the occupancy levels that we've outlined to you today, and then we do some extra work to say, could we make any changes to that?
Chairman, I think that's what Councillor Miss White meant, actually, that the numbers might arrive, but then not to go beyond what we're allowed to as a council, so people would be redirected down to reception. That's how I interpreted it.
So it's not pre-COVID, it's 11 in the council chamber, and the rest redirected to the reception area. Is that a
Thank you,
summary
Mr.
of
Yeah,
what
thank you,
you're
Mr.
saying?
Chairman. Yes, I think what I'm trying to say is that we stick to the health and safety levels and allow the maximum amount of public we can safely admit into the chamber, and any overflow gets accommodated into the reception area.
Okay, yeah. So your seconder agrees that. Councillor Lagan, I think it's for you to sum up now. And are you going to accept that amendment?
Well, the spirit of the motion is with what the amendment is within the spirit of the motion. The only thing that really changes is the Northey room, to be honest, the way I look at it. There's a few points, first of all, and just for Councillor Stevens' benefit, the last statement about health and safety requirements doesn't mean exactly what the officers have presented to us, because the motion has to fit in with what current legislation actually says. And the Fire Safety Order 2005 is very clear in public buildings. I commend the officers, Miss Green and Mr. I didn't quite catch your name. Baccarini. Welcome. Okay. So good luck. And you've got a lot of work to do. From one professional to another. So I'm looking forward to hopefully working alongside you and with you. What the officers have presented is exactly what we needed to do. We can't just fill the chamber up with hundreds of people. It's just not allowed. This is a very old chamber. We're not getting swathes of people rocking up, are we, for council meetings? But I think a lot of that, to be fair, is because we've restricted people, and it's very difficult. I had a resident write to me say it's easier to get into the House of Commons than it is to get into here, okay, to view democracy. So we are taking the steps forward. There's a simple solution. Mr. Holmes has actually said that. Look at a paper, just rip all the fixed fittings out. We've got 750 mil. We need to have those doorways, but that's a restricted area, which have we been acting unlawfully? No. Okay, we definitely haven't. Will we meet fire requirements? Yes. But there's always things that can be done better, and this debate has actually highlighted that. So I agree with the motion, but I think what a couple of members have said about just knocking this whole thing down, making fold-upable tables. I'm not pretty about sitting on this green baize. I just want to be able to sit here, have the debates, and have more people, if we can get closer in, if they wish to come in, and they can access and egress the building safely. So I'm more than happy, and I thank the officers for what they did, because it's very, very clear. Working in that field to get that amount of detail is really important that members understand that, hey, we want loads of people in here, but the legislation doesn't allow us. But we can get in as many as we can. So I'm happy with the amendment or the motion, just get more people in.
Thank you. Therefore, I'll put the amendment to the vote. And are we quite clear on what the amendment is?
Yes.
Can it be on the screen, Miss Bird?
Chairman, I haven't got it typed out. No, I can read out what Councillor Mr White said. She proposed the amendment that the council stick to the health and safety levels and allow the maximum amount of public in the chamber, and any overflow is in the reception area. Yeah.
That's it. Simplified.
There also
there was, but I would suggest that as chairman of
okay, you do that.
As chairman of SNR, she can do that herself. Because that would change the whole motion. Right, do members agree the amendment?
Yeah,
Agreed. Thank you. I therefore put the substantive motion, which is in effect the amendment.
Agreed.
Do you agree?
Agreed.
Thank you. Right. Well, that's taken nearly an hour, so we could have a 15-hour session in front of us.
10B motion 1.
10B
motion 1.
Motion 1.
Councillor Lagan.
Councillor Lagan.
Chairman, although I have a motion that's been seconded, I'd actually like to make a slight amendment if that's acceptable. It's only adding a couple of words.
With your second, who was your seconder?
Councillor Stamp.
Would you agree a slight amendment?
Can I listen to it first?
Fair enough. So you'll need to move what you want to change.
Okay.
I think Mr. Quelch, a motion mover, can do that, can't they?
No, it's just those words. It's what yesterday. Is that okay? Yeah. So I just
Carry
read the
on.
amendment, highlight the amended wording I want to use. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's that members review the provision of land supply data and change to, words added, build out rates, as advised by the developer, those words are added, on a quarterly basis, and that the annual land supply statement is reviewed and agreed by council prior to its publication. So the additionals are changed to and as advised by the developer.
Mr. Holmes, is that a problem with an officer response?
Chairman, I'd like to invite Mr Winslow to join the top table to respond.
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Winslow. Yeah. So it's Mr. Winslow that says that will be acceptable.
Yes, Chairman.
Yeah. Okay. Mr. Winslow.
Thank you, Chairman. That's fine. I can still answer to that.
Carry on.
Okay. Carry on. Sorry. Okay. Chairman, currently a quarterly position statement on the 5-year housing land supply is reported to PGA Committee on the Corporate Risk Register Risk 7 that deals with the monitoring of the 5-year housing land supply since the risk was created in 2018. Whilst it's possible to report on the majority of the 5-year housing land supply data quarterly, due to the current development monitoring approach used, this would need to be caveated that it would not be equivalent to the data presented in the annual statement. The reason for this is residential completion monitoring, which includes site visits to development sites by officers to validate unit completions, occurs annually every April to May after the end of what is called the plan monitoring period, which is set out in the local development plan. That finishes on the 31st of March every year. This scheduling ensures consistency with other Essex authorities and informs the national data returns to government. To present a complete picture on a quarterly basis would require the validation of completions via site visits on a quarterly basis rather than annually. As a comparison, this frequency of visits is not justified to meet the tasks of updating the planning inspectorate as to the 5-year housing land supply positions at related planning appeals. Were we to introduce quarterly site visits, this will impact on other areas of work as it will be additional activities over and above existing commitments. Chairman, the suggestion that the Council approves the 5-year housing land supply report itself is not an issue, and that can be introduced should Council wish, although it will not give any more weight in the planning process as it's only a snapshot in time report. Members should also bear in mind that unless other provisions were made, it may delay its publication from being as close to April as possible due to the programming of the Council through the municipal year. This year, for instance, it would be presented for approval on the current schedule on the 13th of July, the first council after statutory annual council. Finally, Chairman, the motion does deal with matters which could be picked up by the 5-year housing land supply working group, and the additional wording that Councillor Lagan refers to have been discussed at the 5-year housing land supply working group. That remains underway and is currently decided that it's going to present or going to seek advice from a barrister. That work hasn't completed yet. But it could consider reporting frequency as part of its holistic work on that matter.
Thank you. Right, members, Councillor Morgan.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I'm frankly puzzled as to why we're having this debate, because as the officer has pointed out, there is a 5-year housing land supply working group who is responsible for looking into this and coming back to reporting to council. So I'm slightly surprised why we're needing to sort of institute other sort of procedures since that is already in place. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Stamp.
Thank you. Forgive me and correct me if I'm wrong. I thought the 5-year land supply working group was a fact-finding short-lived group, and it was only actually was supposed to finish in November or December last year to give the information to this council. I wasn't aware that that was a continuous group that was approved at the statutory annual. So can you answer me that? The second point I'd like to raise is that I thought this council had passed a resolution that the officers were going to visit the sites, the strategic sites, on a regular basis to agree completions so we could charge the council tax sooner, because it was raised that we weren't collecting the revenue in quickly enough on completions. Now, I could be dreaming it, Chairman, but I don't think I am. So I would have thought that would easily sit alongside this motion, Chairman. Thank you.
I think that I remember that, but I don't know that I remember it as a motion. But Mr. Winslow, have you got an answer to that?
In terms of the 5-year Housing Land Supply Working Group, it's got specific terms of reference which include reporting back to council. It has no time limit on it. It doesn't say in the terms of reference it has to do it by a certain time. And the working group is going through the process which it is. In terms of the Councillor Stamp's final part, Chairman, so the completion of properties for council tax and for planning purposes is different. But we do try to use council tax records and other things as indicators. But the final check consistently carried out across all Essex authorities is via a site visit.
Can I come,
Yeah,
Chairman, can I
please.
come back? It may be different, but why is it not using the same data? We're supposed to be smarter working. If you can actually use that information for another planning policy from planning, whichever department it comes in, I think that would be beneficial. And the other point is, Chairman, sorry, I know you're speaking, I'll wait, is can you confirm that working group was supposed to be, it was in the minutes, you said yourself you was hoping that information was coming back by December or November that year, and we've checked those minutes and it says quite clearly, I wasn't aware that this council had agreed that that working group was partly agreed to go on for as long as it was. It was supposed to be fact-finding, Chairman.
If the chairman makes a comment, that's not necessarily agreed by council. And I did say, I agree, I did say I'd hope it would be able to report, by December.
Can I come back? All you're doing is letting this council prolong what should be information that is required at the time, Chairman. It's not acceptable.
Can I ask Mrs. Green about completions? Is that within your brief, Mrs. Green?
I think between myself and Mr Winslow, we can confirm that the definitions are different. So substantially complete for the purposes of council tax legislation is slightly different to complete for the purposes of planning purposes.
Yeah, but I think Mrs. Stamp's question was, do we visit these sites and check the completions?
Yeah.
So, if I may, Chairman, so we visit them for planning purposes, so to validate whether they are occupiable. So we do that for planning purposes. For council tax purposes, I can't comment as I'm not the relevant officer.
That's why I perhaps unfairly asked Mrs. Green if she was aware, but she isn't. Councillor Swain.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. In view of what's been said about regular reporting to PG&A, where there's scope for all the caveats that Mr. Winslow has mentioned, it's only really with regard to the annual statement that we wanted to come for approval by council before publication. So the motion is unexceptional. I don't know whether the wording that additional wording that Councillor Lagner suggested actually helped his cause, because how the numbers are calculated and whether it's on developer proposals or not is all part of any discussion of the quarterly updates being presented to PG&A. It'll become clear there as part of the explanation. So in a sense, the additional wording he suggests putting here seems to be a bit more restrictive on his own amendment. So I would advocate the amendment the motion as it stands.
Councillor Spenceley.
Okay, so what I'm going to say now is that however we do it, we need to have a way of scrutinising the 5-year land supply going forward, because I was elected in April. I don't know, I've not been a member of PG&A, But what I do know is that the scrutiny hadn't been sufficient, and I'm going to say that now, because that land supply did not contain all the figures that it should have done, and we need to find a mechanism without going to lots of extra trouble and making it unsustainable for officers. But we do need to have a mechanism where this council has an opportunity to scrutinise that, because clearly what's already in place didn't work, and we now have some confusion over the working group and what its role actually is, I fear. So we need to look at it from that point of view and find a way forward. Thank you.
The penultimate, I was going to say the penultimate speaker, Councillor Fluker, who's hidden behind Mrs Fleming.
I'm sure you've always got your eye on me, Chairman. I'm sorry, I'll give way to Mrs Fleming, because I think she might have beaten me too, actually. Did you raise your hand, or were you flicking your hair?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, right, okay. Chairman, look, the 5-year housing land supply, as far as I can remember, and I think I'm a member of the working group, I certainly attend, I think it was actually set up to look at the mechanics of how we were dealing with the 5-year housing land supply. And in many, many ways, that member engagement has been hugely successful, because we know that we are moving towards having a 5-year housing land supply. And I hear the arguments about checking if houses are finished or checking if houses are started, but the whole idea of the 5-year housing land supply is one falls off one end. Unless you put one in the bottom, you no longer have a 5-year housing land supply. So, the tenacity in which we do this can affect our overall performance in relation to the 5-year housing land supply. But I agree with what Councillor Spencerley says, because one of the most bizarre things that I heard in the working group for some time is when an officer asked the members in the working group who were going to a pre-app if they could ask the applicant what the build-out rate was on another site, because they hadn't been able to make contact with the people on that site. So, whilst I accept what Mr Winslow says, I think members need to be put back into their comfort zone with regards to site visits and the way that we communicate with the developers, because I think we are still missing some figures. And I think the fact that if the members were asked to ask a developer about build-out rates, then clearly we're not engaging. I won't mention the company's name because it wouldn't be fair. Thank you.
Councillor White.
To be honest, Chairman, I was just going to amend this, that motion 1 gets sent to the PG and A committee, and they can have the data rates rather than wasting time with this at full council. I think that's where it should go.
Councillor Fleming.
Thank you, Chair. Matt, you're right. It does. We do get the figures in the risk register, but it's a bit of a sort of broad brush. I think the conversations you have at a working group and committee, they're completely different. So I mean, for me, all scrutiny is good. Everybody benefits from scrutiny. So whether the working group is permanent or not, I think it should be permanent, and the figures should be looked at quarterly. I really think that everybody would benefit from that conversation.
Councillor Stilts.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. As the chair of that working group, I will say that one of the discussions we've had is that one of the officers does phone those builders to find out their building rate, but they won't always answer to her. But what I would like to ask Mr Winslow is, we are waiting for that questions that we put to that barrister. Can we do this before we have those answers back from him?
Mr Winslow, would you answer that? Then I'll come to the leader.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, I suppose you could, technically, but you could get advice back which is different. And then you may look to change your decision. So, obviously, you haven't got the benefit of the council advice yet. So that was what the working group had asked to do.
Thank you. Leader?
Thank you, Chairman. Well, we've heard from Mr Winslow how, of course, there is reporting to PGA on a corporate risk register that goes regularly regarding the 5-year housing land supply, and also made the point, I think, that obviously further reporting, if you're looking at saying it's increased, then you've equally got to realise the way that can go, and that you've got to do regular reporting when the numbers go down. Regarding the 5-year housing land supply working group, Councillor Mrs Fleming's raised the point of should perhaps be permanent. Now, actually, in a way, this motion could be seen to prejudge possibly some outcomes of that working group. And Councillor Stilts referred to what we've asked and we're waiting for. And I think we do need to have that come back to the working group. And indeed, because we don't know yet what the findings are or recommendations that may or not come out of that. And I think that's a very good body to be looking at things going forward. And it's not time limited to my knowledge, unless I'm wrong, but I think actually that's been ascertained tonight. And I think that at 5-year housing land supply has had some very good discussions. Councillor Fleming's absolutely correct. In a working group, you do have different discussions. There's more fluidity in people being able to speak, take up sort of thinking from others as well. In a committee, it's more structured and everything. So my recommendation would be we need to wait until we have the findings that come back to the 5-year housing land supply. And I think that's a vehicle that can deal actually with these issues and PGA as well. That would be what I would indicate, Chairman, because I do think we need to have those findings. We need to know what the recommendations are. And that could have then lead to a discussion on how frequently any future reporting should be. And that working group reports back to council. And I actually think there should be a report coming back, a whole holistic report from that working group, from the chairman of that working group to this council. Thank you.
Councillor Lagan, to sum up.
Can I just ask, can Mr Winslow confirm when the 5-year land supply is going to be published? Did he say July this year? Thank you.
Mr Winslow?
No, I didn't. I didn't say. I did mention July in my statement to you. If the terms of the motion were to go through, it may not be published until July because that's the first council after statutory annual council that could hear the report and approve it. We can publish it as soon as the completion data is done, and we would endeavour to do that in April.
So if we vote for this, then you're saying that we're going to stop it.
You'll delay it till July. Sorry, Chairman.
Councillor Lagan, would you like to sum up, please?
Very much so, Chair. There's a few things here. One is the 5-year housing land supply whole project was born out of need to scrutinise information, which we found that there was errors in spreadsheets, etc., which had since been corrected. The 5-year housing land supply was put together with 16 members of the council with a great concern, which is a huge number of councillors that showed their concern at that point. The working group was set to look at methodology and what's in and what's out. That's been a good group. My understanding of that was a task and finish group that had the terms of reference may say. So to answer Councillor Morgan's, on my view, it was time limited. So once we've done that work, that piece of work falls off, and we stick with what we've got. The barrister has absolutely no bearing. The barrister will look at the process that's being undertaken and give us advice on that. The motion is completely different for what that part of the conversation is. Councillor Swain, it's not my cause, it's the district's cause. This is one of the most important things. We've had huge, massive errors come forward with the way that we've worked, allowing certain developments to happen because we haven't maintained a 5-year housing land supply. So we need to do everything we can, and sometimes we might not be able to do that. So it is what it is, and it isn't what it isn't. So it's not my cause. I'm standing here as a district councillor trying to protect the district and develop the district in a way that can serve the future residents when we're long gone. Wasting time, councillor. Said I find that Councillor White, this is not wasting time, and I don't normally bite, but I find that quite disrespectful when it's something as important as what we're talking about shaping the district. And as a councillor who I have a high level of respect for, I was a bit disappointed in that. So really, I make no apology. I stick with the intent of the motion. I believe that the motion will give us what we want. We won't get, as Mr Winslow's kindly said, we won't get everything accurate at that point in time, but it will give us a snapshot. And I think from a perspective that we could delay it until July, we'll put an extraordinary meeting in. We can do that. 10 o'clock, I don't care when it is. We'll come in, we'll have the figures in now, we can get it done, we'll have it scrutinised. We'll all agree or all agree to disagree, and then we publish. That way we have the whole process from start to finish scrutinised. We all get a chance to look at it. Well, the members who are in place at the time will get a chance to look at it, and that way you can I'm not going to use the word defend, but you can justify every decision that's made and every calculation that's made. So that's how I see it. I commend this, and I would stand by this. If it falls, it falls, but I'd like to see it succeed. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Lagan. We'll now put that to the vote.
Can I just have some clarification?
Go on.
Mr. Winslow, what you're saying is, if the motion succeeds, there will be a delay on the reporting of the 5-year housing land.
That's completely wrong, because I've just addressed that in my closing statement.
I just wanted the clarification what Mr. Winslow said.
Mr. Winslow clearly said, as far as I heard it, was that he couldn't publish until July. He couldn't publish until July, until the council in July had agreed. That's what he said. Councillor Lagan has said an extraordinary meeting could deal with it, and I don't want to prolong the debate. We'll now move to the vote. Those in favour.
I've just been asked to give three votes, if you permit me, on the pre-election period by Paul.
Mr. Dodson wants to give some advice.
Me to give some advice.
I want Mr. Quelch to give. Mr. Quelch. And if you get me into trouble, Mr. Quelch.
Okay, I'll try not to,
talk to you later.
Okay, I'll try not to, Chairman. My colleague Mr. Dodson just made a good point, really, and wanting to know about the pre-election period. Because the notice of poll will be given on the 13th of March, that means pre-election period, which was otherwise known as the PERDA period, but it's been renamed now, will kick in from the 13th of March. And the government advice is that you don't put in contentious issues during that period. You can do normal business, but you should avoid, as far as possible, dealing with issues that will be seen as having a lot of community interest and potentially contentious, because that could have an influence on the election. That's the advice of government. So in other words, do your ordinary business, your ordinary transactions, but don't do special things that might particularly attract public interest. So you need to be aware of that. It's not prohibited by the law. I'm not saying it's unlawful to do it. What I'm saying is government advice is to avoid, as far as possible, during pre-election period, those sorts of issues.
Thank you, Mr. Quelch. That doesn't help at all. I don't think it's relevant, because any issue that might come relating to this would be after the election. It would be the new council that would.
Yeah, it's me. Chairman, Mr. Dodson's got it.
Mr. Dodson.
Yes. Sorry, I just want members to fully understand. The advice of Mr. Winslow was that we would publish in April. If we can't publish until it's been approved by council, and council wasn't meeting before the election, it would then be statutory annual on the 18th of May, so that the next available date would be the 19th of May, which would be a month's delay. I'm only making sure that members are absolutely clear on what they're voting on and the implications of it.
Thank you,
Thank you, Chairman.
I'll now put. No, the debate's completed. I'll now put the motion to the vote. Those. Yeah, Miss Bird, I assume that recorded vote was seconded? It was, Chairman. Yeah, okay. Would you call the roll, please? Those in favour say for or agree. Those against say against. Those abstaining say abstain. Please continue.
Thank you, Chairman. Starting with Councillor Bassinger, please.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Bell?
Not here.
Oh, sorry, apologies. Councillor Boyce?
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs. Channer?
Against.
Councillor Julius McVeigh. Councillor Mrs Fleming.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Fluker.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Helm.
Not here.
Councillor Hull.
Against.
Councillor Lagan.
4, please, Tara.
Councillor Morgan.
Against.
Councillor Nunn.
For.
Councillor Mrs Shaughnessy.
For.
Councillor Spenceley.
For.
Councillor Stamp.
For.
Councillor Stevens.
For.
Councillor Stilts.
I'm going to abstain.
Councillor Swain.
For.
Councillor Mrs Thompson.
Against.
Councillor White.
For.
Chairman, the results of that are 11 for, 5 against and 1 abstention.
That's therefore carried. Thank you, members. And the next motion.
10B, motion 2, Councillor Lagan.
Councillor Lagan, 10B, motion 2. Is it?
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. Sorry. Right. Okay. Yeah. Motion 2 is that council returns to an open door policy from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. daily, Monday to Friday, and has a fully staffed front desk presence that can direct visitors to officers who can assist with residents' inquiries. I haven't put a preamble in here, but I just want to add a little bit as a preamble, is that I'm not asking for every officer to come back into the building. I'm asking for maybe like an ACL type of ECC type of structure where there's people available to help direct and pass on to officers who may be in the building or who may be contactable by Teams or by telephone. So that's the intent of the motion.
Mrs Green.
Mrs Green.
Richard.
Mr Holmes.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for the motion. It'd be useful for us to set out the options available to members, how we actually operate now. So I'll invite Mrs Green to set out how it works, to give you that information before you perhaps decide on the motion itself. So Mrs Green, please.
Thank you, members. First of all, I'd like to reassure members that we do currently deliver a face-to-face service for our residents who aren't able to access our digital services. And that service is delivered from 10 till 4 every day and is resourced by a customer services advisor who is able to deal with most inquiries. Whilst we do encourage members of the public to make appointments, we are able to deal with callers to the office, and we would never turn anybody away. What we do have is a fairly strong channel shift approach, which means that if we do have a visitor to the office, that we would try and encourage them to use digital services. However, our officers would never turn anybody away, and as I said, the desk is manned from 10 till 4 every day. I hope, if it's okay, members, I'd just like to give a little bit of background to our current approach. So our current customer service to residents is being delivered as a digital first or self-service approach, which was a really key part of the 2019 transformation programme. And we brought in significant investment in technology to make it easier for customers and residents to access online services. We've invested in improvements to our website, which remains ongoing. We've increased our online forms to enable customers to contact us 24/7. We have a programme of business and process improvement work to ensure that we're able to provide the most efficient and effective services to our residents and businesses. In July 2022, members of the Strategy and Resources Committee endorsed a number of key principles for our emerging customer strategy, which will be coming forward to members for consideration. And one of those key principles was encouraging access to services using the most efficient and effective, cost-effective channels. That was promoting and encouraging self-service or supported access to online services, providing a telephone service for those that are unable to access online services, and ensuring a face-to-face service is available for those customers who need a greater degree of support and for whom digital or telephone services are not appropriate. And the current customer service is being delivered to reflect that key principle. Our face-to-face service currently mirrors the hours of operation of our telephone service, which is between 10 and 4. And during that time, it's staffed by a fully trained customer services officer who will deal with any callers to the office, whether they have an appointment or not. Between the hours of 8:30 to 10 and after 4, our customer services advisors will prioritise dealing with online inquiries to ensure that there is a prompt response to all customers, regardless which access channel they choose to use, whether it be telephone, face-to-face or digital. Our really successful digital-first approach means that most customers contact us online, and at the moment is around about 92%. And there's around 8% that then contact us by telephone. But we do recognise that we have a small number of residents for whom digital and telephone contact is not appropriate. And we do recognise this, and we continue to provide that in-person service for customers who need that extra help. To ensure the most appropriate support is available, we do encourage customers that want to meet face-to-face and who need an appointment to contact us first, so that arrangements can be made in order that they can deal with the most relevant officer. However, as I've said, our customer service staff are always available to provide advice and guidance to any callers to the office. And if the member of the public's inquiry can't be dealt with at the first point of contact, we would then triage that inquiry to the case officer, who would then make contact with the customer directly to resolve the inquiry. And this is the way that the council have worked for many years. We've never operated a service where customers can walk in and speak to members to officers. What we do is we ensure that any urgent issues are always dealt with immediately. So somebody, for example, who is homeless, who had no accommodation for the night, we would always deal with that inquiry there and then. Since reopening our reception area, the types of inquiries that we get remain very similar to the types of inquiries that we previously received. And these were customers dropping off forms or documents or coming to us for further supplies of recycling sacks. And those type of inquiries are being dealt with by our customer services team. Other inquiries we will deal with, and we do attempt to deal with all inquiries at the first point of contact. One of the differences that has changed since COVID is that prior to COVID, we did receive a high number of callers to the office relating to benefits and council tax. And what we did is we did have one of our revenues and benefits officers that was available every day to deal with those inquiries, because we did have a high number. However, because of COVID, we have found that customers have moved online, and in fact, particularly with council tax and benefits, we have found that those inquiries are now predominantly dealt with either online or via telephone. This is very similar to what we've seen with wider benefits. So most DWP benefits now you have to claim either online or via telephone. So this is something that customers have become used to. When we reopened the reception area, we did make provision for a revenues and benefits officer to be available in the office to, if necessary, to deliver that same level of service. But in fact, that even though we've had officers in, that service hasn't been needed. And we've actually only had one member of the public that we've needed to make an appointment with to deal with their inquiry, because all of those inquiries are now being dealt with mostly by telephone or online. To give you sort of statistics, prior to COVID, we would have seen around 17 customers per day about inquiries for their council tax or their benefits. Since reopening in April, because of the channel shift, we've actually only seen one customer who's needed a face-to-face appointment. So referring to the overall numbers of visitors, so the numbers of visitors remains quite low. An average of around 10 customers per day are coming in to see us. And as I said, they're for more general inquiries, dropping off forms, and inquiring about recycling sacks. The majority of people that come to the council offices are actually to see our partner organisations such as Citizens Advice Bureau, Department of Work and Pensions or the police. We do have a system of managing access because we do have multiple partners that we now work with. And we did introduce that access jointly with partners. And we have recently reviewed that, and the general feedback from partners is the current system works well. So when a member of the public arrives for an appointment, the Department of Work or Pensions, or they've come in to see the Citizens Advice Bureau, those partner organisations will take responsibility for their own customers, so they'll come and meet and greet them. Customers can come into the entrance lobby, and the relevant partner is able to then deal with their own customers. This hasn't presented any problems, and we have received no formal complaints to date about the current arrangements. And as I said, we have reviewed the current situation with partners, and the feedback is generally that it's working very well. We are currently working with one Malden partners to develop a community hub. And we have a working group that is looking at that with the aim to provide support for our most vulnerable residents and to support digital inclusion, which is a really key part. Updates on the progress of this initiative are being reported via the One Malden Partnership Group, and that will include a review of how our reception space is being used by partners. Additionally, any resource requirements to support the hub will also be identified through this project and will be brought back to members for a decision. It's also proposed that face-to-face services are included within the remit of our customer strategy engagement with members. In summary, we wish to reassure members that we are currently delivering a face-to-face service for our residents who are unable to access digital services, and that service is being delivered from 10 to 4 every day and is being resourced by one of our customer services advisors who is able to deal with callers to the office. There has historically been very little footfall in the early part of the day, and then the current service does mirror our existing telephone service. Appointments can and have been made to meet with the public outside of our normal opening times from 10 till 4. So if we do have a resident that wants to have an appointment with us outside of those times, then that can be accommodated, indeed regularly is. Thank you, members. Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, debate. Okay. Debate.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Councillor Stelz. I didn't realise you'd finished, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Although Mrs. Green doesn't get complaints, I'm sure that there's many people in this chamber that does. Are our doors still that they are locked? Because the amount of people, and especially people that are slightly confused, walk up, find a locked door and walk away again. They don't look for a bell to ring, and the person behind the desk doesn't look up to see if there's someone there. I actually think, seeing as the town council can open their doors and anyone can walk in and talk to them, we are a district council. Why are we not giving our residents the same? We have elderly residents, we have confused residents, we have residents that cannot use, we have residents that cannot use the electronic systems. We need to be catering for everyone, and anybody that goes onto our website that tries to find something will know it's a minefield. So that's my thoughts on this.
Thank you. Councillor Fluker.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I mean, it was, to be honest, Chairman, it was quite... Well, first of all, can I start by thanking Miss Green for returning my personal and private property last night? Thank you. Chairman, it was quite refreshing to come to the council offices this morning, not have to ring a bell or bang on the window, and the doors open and come in. I mean, my simplistic mind thought that this motion was, apart from other things, to do with an open door policy. A few weeks ago, when we had that cold period, I came into the council offices and to a working group meeting, and I met two elderly ladies in between the two doors, and they both looked absolutely frozen. And I said to them, "Who were you waiting for?" And they said, "Malden District Council." So I said, "Have you pressed the bell?" And she said, "Yes, we found the bell and we pressed it, but we've been here about 10 minutes, dear." And so I went in. I let myself in via the other door because I couldn't get let in because I couldn't attract the attention of the person who was on reception. So I crept round the side and let myself in. And looking at these ladies, I decided, Chairman, to let them in and told them to sit in the waiting area that I think CAB used. There's a couple of seats there. I think one had tried to phone the council and couldn't get any satisfaction with making an appointment, and the other one had decided to accompany her friends for the sole purpose of collecting some pink sacks. But nevertheless, they'd been trapped outside in the cold for about 8 minutes. Chairman, my feeling is that's not really acceptable. You know, we've had some in-depth conversations tonight, feels like tonight already, doesn't it? With regards to, you know, DDA compliance and making sure that we look after everybody in the community. It doesn't make me feel very comfortable seeing people standing outside the council offices. I think actually from what Miss Green says is that once you get through the doors, you can see somebody between 10 and 4 o'clock because there's always somebody there. You know, I think we just need, you know, that is the front of house, that is, for Malvern District Council. You walk up the steps and the doors are locked. You know, I think maybe we should have a, I'm sure Councillor Nunn's reminding you that I've had my 3 minutes, but but I just think we should make it look more welcoming. I am a great advocate of channel shift, and I think Miss Green and her team should be commended on the channel shift, but we do have this small minority of people that, you know, sadly will disappear out of the system probably in the next 10 years that don't use the internet, they don't use those sort of facilities, and they like to come into the offices, like those 2 elderly ladies who I'm sure it was part of their day and making their day, probably talking to somebody other than each other. So maybe Miss Green could sort of take away some of that and think, well, maybe we should work towards having the doors open between 10 to 4. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a lot of sympathy with this motion. I've got a number of people who've come here and thought they've sort of like the Mary Celeste and can't find anybody to help them. However, I'm just wondering whether a straightforward motion like this in this body is the best way of dealing with it. We've seen the officers stated out that there's a customer engagement strategy at work, and various other very difficult matters need to be dealt with people working from home and every other thing. And now that I know that S&R is the committee that's responsible for looking into the domestic arrangements, should we not put this to S&R for a report and to come back to council?
Councillor Spenceley.
Yeah, I just want to say that I don't think it's always about, thank you, I don't think it's always about the people who can't access services. Sometimes there are some queries which are just not suitable for an online form. And when we're assessing the numbers of people coming to us online, what we're not counting in that is that thing in human nature where you just give up and you don't come forward at all. So I think you always have to be careful with statistics like this and about what they actually mean. I'm going to say something really controversial because it's what I truly believe, but I believe that we should have a customer services team back in the office. I'm sorry, I don't agree with not having them here. And I think that actually having a really open, friendly and helpful reception desk is a mark of a truly efficient and good forward-looking organisation. I don't think that to be forward-looking, we've all got to disappear behind computer screens. Thank you.
Councillor White. Councillor White, and then Councillor Fleming, and then Councillor Leader.
Thank you, Mr.
Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I mean, I have to say that we actually have the best customer services team anywhere. The phone service is absolutely brilliant, and in fact, I always use them to speak to officers or anybody else. They're really, really good. I'm a bit surprised this is here because we've already started discussing this as Strategy and Resources Committee. And although I'm in favour of members of the public being seen by officers, this is something that we really need to resource. It needs lots of resources, and we need to work out where the money is coming from and how we're going to fund it. So I think that we need to bring this to the Strategy and Resources Committee, and I'm happy to propose that I do this as chairman. I don't know how we can alter the amendment to put that in there. I'm not too sure,
Well,
but it needs further work.
An amendment to move it to S&R.
Okay, yeah. So I propose that we remove the amendment and send it to S&R.
Is that seconded? Councillor Fleming, I think next.
Thank you, Chair. I actually support this motion. It's that saying, isn't it? My door's always open. That's the saying, my door's always open. And I'm afraid the impression we give here is that our door is not always open. I accept that residents you know, in need of revs and bends can go online or telephone, but there's a cost to that. You know, some people actually can't afford to use the internet or their phone. They can't afford the data. You know that from, you know, there are schemes for those in need to buy, you know, more data. And that's the point, is that we shouldn't be putting barriers up. I actually think that the reception desk should be fully staffed from 9 till 5 or even 6, and the doors should be open. People shouldn't be locked out. They shouldn't have to press a button. Thank you.
Councillor Stamp.
Chairman, are we having a break soon, Chairman?
Not for an hour yet, or possibly an hour.
Sorry. Okay. Well, I've just jotted a few things down. The comments I get back is can't be bothered to ring the council. Nobody does anything. Can't get in. Phones are always busy. Waste of time. At least if they get hold of a councillor, you do something for us. And also, Councillor Fleming's totally right. We've only had to watch the news that all, like O2, Vodafone, all those price rises are coming in. I think, is it this year? They're going to hike the prices up, and people aren't going to have access to be able to do everything online. And no disrespect, I'm getting that little bit older, and sometimes it is. I know it's hard to believe, Chairman, but sometimes it's hard for me. I'd rather speak to somebody, because you don't always get it first time. And if you put a form in, that form you cannot always be responded to straight away. We should be open. We should be welcoming. The leader's speech last night, which I thought should have been about budget, but it was about other things, actually turned around and said about communities, putting our people first. Well, we're not putting our people first, are we, at the moment, Chairman? And I don't support the amendment. I don't think it should go to S&R. It's quite a straightforward proposal, and I think the people who've come to attend this meeting, the councillors who could attend, should make the decisions.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Chairman. Actually, I think what's most important is that people who do want to walk in and have access actually do have access for what they came from, not to make an appointment to come back again. And the difficulty is resourcing that and have officers from every department just on hand waiting to come and talk to people that they aren't expecting. But I absolutely take Councillor Fluker's point, and I'm actually wondering is there some reason why the doors can't allow people in to a waiting area that's inside, where they can ring the bell and get whichever of our partners they want? I mean, you know, is that a problem? Because it seems half a dozen chairs in reception. Please come in, press a bell and sit down. Sounds like a way forward, at any rate, while we wait for things to go through committees and what have you, because it's still February. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Swain.
Thank you, Chairman. I mean, this seems to be basically an operational matter. The wording here is a bit about what fully staffed front desk means. But I think we would understand that as there's somebody on the desk all the time, in which case there shouldn't be this problem about the doors being shut. The doors should be open all the time. Whether there's a whole backup team on site there to talk to people is a resource matter. But the other phrase, can direct visitors to officers who can assist. I would like to think that would enable somebody who can't use the internet, who wants to speak to somebody, could be put on an internet contact with an officer in the reception area. In other words, somebody who can't use the internet or doesn't have access will be able to use it with the support of the officer who is manning the reception desk. I don't know whether that is actually done at the moment or whether that is thought about, but it comes down to operational matters as far as I can see.
Mrs. Green wants to answer or make a comment. Mrs. Green.
Thank you, Chairman. With regards to being able to contact officers in reception digitally, yes, we have set that up. So if a member of the public comes in and they need to speak to an officer, then we do have teams set up so that members of the public can, if necessary, speak to the officers. With regards to the access, Members may have seen if they came in today that we've actually got a sofa that is in reception that wasn't in there up until recently. And what we're looking at is being able to, exactly as members have suggested, reviewing how the customers come into us. Our partners are still very keen to take responsibility for managing their own customers. However, what we're looking at is whether or not we can make it work so that the customers can still ring the bell in terms of letting the partners know that they're here, but actually allowing them to come in and sit and wait until their appointment. So we're just exploring that with partners at the moment. And as I say, as you'll see, there's a sofa in there to enable us to start to do that.
Councillor Stevens. Councillor Stevens, then Councillor Shaughnessy, and then the leader. Councillor Bassinger, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. I don't understand why it's so hard. I mean, Councillor Thompson just said it, just open the door. I've arrived, the door is shut. Yes, eventually I'd have sussed that there's a bell over there or something, but I'm looking at the person on the desk and sort of waving my arms around and trying to attract attention. And I'm immediately put off because the door didn't open. And then when I did come in, the person was a bit sort of, what do you want? I want the door to be welcome and somebody to go, good morning, how can I help you? I don't think we need to send it to SNR or anywhere else to do that. It's just, let's do it. Can we just agree to do that now, please? Thank you.
Councillor Shaughnessy.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm rapidly becoming that old lady confused by the bells. Those bells should absolutely go. We have to have a complete open door policy. One, perhaps two people welcoming on the desk. That is definitely the way to go, and I think we need to pass this today. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bassinger, and then the...
Thank you, Mr Chairman. I
just
completely agree with Councillor Stevens and Councillor Shaughnessy. I mean, basically, it's a point of contact issue as far as I'm concerned. I think as you come to this building, the doors should open. You should be able to go to a desk, which you can, and there is somebody there, and they should be able to direct you. So I think it's perfectly simple. All we want are for the doors to be open and for people to be able to access the building and actually speak to somebody and then get directed to the help they need. They may have to come back, which is perfectly reasonable. I think you make an appointment. You know, you can't expect people just to be in the building to facilitate every single inquiry, but I do think you should be able to have a point of contact, and those doors should be open. Thank you.
Thank you. The penultimate speaker, the leader, before Councillor Lagan sums up. Leader.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, I've listened to the debate and it's clear there's some real feelings within the chamber regarding members of the public being able to access our offices 9 to 4 instead of 10 till 4, having the open door policy. I actually have always been one of those that have, I'm sure Mrs Green will say that, regarding older persons, and I'm not in any way saying they're not on the internet, but a large number of people perhaps don't like the digital. That's why I was very keen to ensure this council did make sure we cover all our customers in terms of inclusivity, how we have access to them. What I would say, I think where Councillor Miss White was coming from, and very clear, because SNR has been looking at it, and a draft, there is a customer engagement strategy, a customer strategy being looked at. Now, a draft of that can go to SNR, and together I think it's very important members know about the one Malden district and the community hub that Miss Green has spoken about. Indeed, and that may actually influence people, and that part of that strategy should be about engagement with our public and see what they want actually and feel they want, and also members. So, Chairman, there's a mood in the chamber which is very clear, but I can see Councillor White's coming from, and I'm sure that will happen anyway. I think that should happen anyway, a draft policy strategy which has been spoken about should go to SNR, together with an update on what is happening regarding the One Malden partnership and the community hub. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Lagan, sum up, please.
Thank you, Chair, and you'll be very pleased, I'm sure, and everybody at the top table, that this is my last bit. We're only asking to have the door open. Yeah. What Miss White has actually said, all the work that's been done is really good. You know, channel shift was thrown on us, transformation was thrown on us. You know, and you've responded to that. There's not an ounce of problem with that. It's just, you know, all people have said. I think in the chamber earlier on, they said that you don't get the complaints, we do. Yeah. because they can't access you to get to the complaint. So you get it, you know, and we've got a lot of bridges to build with people. We've got a lot of ways of being inclusive rather than exclusive. And it's astonishing what you can do. You know, I remember pre-COVID coming up and just walking in, the door opened, you know, and that gives me an access point. There's no barriers there. I go straight over to a counter and I see somebody and I got some support. And I had to come back some on occasions and was directed to other locations. I think we're making it bigger than Ben-Hur, and I can't see the point, the logic or the expense needed to refer it to another committee. So if that resolution goes through, that should fail in my opinion, but it's down to members to make that decision. The only difference that we're asking, because you said, Ms White, someone's on the desk anyway, is have the door open.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, I have an amendment that it be referred to SNR, but my feelings is the consensus in the chamber is that isn't necessary. Do you still wish to proceed with that, Ms White?
Sorry, no, Chairman, I think we've clarified it. I actually thought that Councillor Leggan was asking for something totally different, but now I understand what he's asking for. No, I'll withdraw my amendment.
Thank you. I think you're going to get everybody in agreement. Members agree that motion? Agreed. Thank you. Anybody against? No. Thank you very much. We'll then go on to the next one, which
10C 1A, Councillor Fluker, but 10C 1A is not required.
We now come to Councillor Fluker. Do you wish to proceed with that that motion?
Motion 1A, Chairman, is clearly no. I've got to leave soon to go to work, so and I don't often say that. So, Chairman,
1A is void.
Yeah.
1B.
Already we've seen people proposing sending motions off to committees, and I'm always in favour of that because I feel as though they've got more expertise there to deal with and certainly more members with the knowledge of that particular service.
1B.
Chairman, I'll start off by saying this. When I joined the council 12 years ago, when I joined the council 12 years ago, there was a process in place where members were invited into the various departments to see how they worked. And I can remember going along to Miss Green's department and she and her staff then were explaining how Revs and Bens worked. And I think I had to have several meetings in room 8 afterwards because I never did get it, but I can see her smiling, but she was most helpful. And I think in many ways, Chairman, it's the same as housing. I feel as though members, don't really see what the housing department does, how much hard work they do. And I can remember also going to the housing department.
Carry on, sorry.
Yeah, so I can also remember going to the housing department with, I'm sure lots of people in the chamber will remember Mr Gaylor, who preceded Mr Swords, and they showed us how it all worked and what they did and everything else. And I do hope, Chairman, that when the new administration comes in May, that we maybe pick up on that, because I feel as though a lot of members don't understand, what's going on behind the scenes in this council. Chairman, I'll start by saying that the unwavering and tenacious hard work of the Senior Specialist Coordinator Housing and his team he leads is recognised and commended upon. They do a huge amount of work, and I'm pleased that Mr John Swords is here to hear that, actually. Chairman, just to put some background to this, on the 10th of February, the district-wide immediate housing need registers was as followed. There were over 1,100 applicants, singles, couples and families on the housing register, with a further 80 applicants waiting to be processed. By comparison, between 2008 and the first lockdown, there were 750 applicants. So you can see, Chairman, 750 applicants in the register before the lockdown. So you can see how the figures have moved. Sadly, Chairman, there are currently 91 homeless applications, 50 families and 41 singles. This is the highest number since our records began. And there are 20 applicants Chairman, I've only got the data on the 10th of February, and I'm sure Mr. Swords will update it, and I do hope it's dropped significantly, but I suspect it hasn't. There are 20 applicants, families, couples, and singles currently nightly paid temporary accommodation outside of the district, the furthest away on that date being Peterborough. Chairman, obviously there's a huge amount of money involved in paying for all this. And I think everybody recognises, Chairman, that nationally there is a huge problem with homelessness and people on the homeless register and the housing register. We can talk forever about this. This council does very well in providing social and affordable housing, but it clearly isn't enough. Chairman, having done some background searches and looking at sorry, Chairman, I was just saying, Chairman, this council does a marvellous job in providing its affordable and social housing through the process of our local development plan. But when you look at other councils and you look at the figures pro rata in relation to the number of houses they have, the number of residents they have, we do look as though we're in a slightly worse position than our contemporaries. And I think it's a long time since, certainly, I've looked at homeless policies of this council, and I do know, Chairman, and I'll speak carefully, but I do know, Chairman, that the Housing Department are looking at a scheme which could address some of these issues. So, Chairman, my motion is really quite straightforward, and that is that this council, based on those figures and where we are nationally, that we declare a homeless crisis. I mean, this is very, very, very serious. I can't remember the last time we debated these figures. It was a long, long time ago, and I can remember being quite shocked then. And we need to get behind our homeless, our housing team, Chairman. And my understanding from speaking to members of that team is they seem to be under-resourced. Now, far be it to me to say that we should increase the establishment of this council, but they do seem to be under-resourced in relation to the amount of work they do. And I know how hard they work. I've been working with them over premises in Southminster, which we've used in the past, and it keeps dipping in and out, and I'm hoping that we can dip back in again. But, Chairman, my motion is, Chairman, that the council declares a homeless crisis and resolves to agree that at the next meeting the council, the corporate leadership team, presents an updated strategy to reduce homelessness in the district. Chairman, that's my motion, but I would expect, Chairman, that when that's brought forward, that a review of the department's done, particularly with regards to resourcing, to see whether or not they really do need some more resources. My gut feeling is, Chairman, whether it's short term or not, they do need that. And obviously, I'll subject to what the officers say, I'll amend the
Councillor Fluke, I was going to ask you if you are not so prescriptive about the next council meeting.
Look, Chairman, you know me better than most, and I'm very open to any suggestion you might make. I might not agree with it, but I think that we've got to be careful, Chairman. I've texted Mr. Holmes already about motion 3 and timing. But yeah, let's do it. We owe it to the homeless. We're just about to spend £250,000 on a piece of play equipment, and here we go with homeless people in bed and breakfast in Peterborough.
Yes.
Sorry to sound like a socialist, but I think I'm turning into one.
I always thought you was. Do you agree to not be so prescriptive with about reporting to the next council meeting, because that may help you?
Yeah, Chairman. Look, I'm sort of happy to amend that, but what I want to do is, Chairman, look, we have proved it to ourselves last night that if we set a challenging timeline, we can deliver quickly and efficiently and objectively.
This is a slightly different issue, I think.
Chairman, think of those people in bed and breakfast this evening in Peterborough. That's how urgent it is. Yeah. It's as urgent as the corporate plan. But, Chairman, I agree, we need to do this work. I mean, I'm quite happy, if officers give me a steer, I'm quite happy to amend it. or if someone gives me a steer.
Yeah. Can I call on Mr. Holmes? Please?
Yeah.
Thank you, Chairman.
I think, Mr. Holmes, that he did agree to not be so prescriptive.
I did hear that too, Chairman. Firstly, I'd like to invite two officers to come forward who will actually take us through the details. We'll just do a bit of administration and swap over a couple of officers. So I'm going to invite Mr. Swords and Mr. Gaylor Ford, who will go through a response for you. We have looked at the preamble, we've also the motion, and obviously we'll give some up-to-date information for members ahead of your decision. I want to reassure members that we are very much looking at resourcing, and obviously, again, through the decisions of council and the changes to the structure, for that identifiable housing team. And I think you're right, we probably will identify resource issues in that. There are more things we can do, but obviously that does need resource. So very mindful of that, and the structure changes that we're making will actually help strengthen that housing team. However, I think I'll now hand over to Mr. Gaylor, who's going to perhaps first deal with the preamble, some of the issues raised, and then give you some more up-to-date information.
Mr. Gaylor.
Thank you. And firstly, thank you for the kind comments regarding the senior officers within the housing team. They do indeed work extremely hard to try and deliver the housing duties to Malden residents. For ease of reference, I've broken down the preamble into a series of 4 points just to help reference those more clearly. So the first point was that on the 10th of February 2023, the Housing Needs Register had 1,144 applicants, with a further 80 waiting to be processed. And by comparison, in 2008, up to first lockdown, there were 750 applicants. So the high numbers of applicants on the council's housing register actually reflect the lack of affordable housing that we've got within the district. And the drivers for that lack of affordable accommodation include a lack of approved housing development within the district. We're getting a loss of private rented stock as private landlords leave the area. There's an increase in competition for our own local housing resource, and that's driven by competition with central government and also neighbouring local authorities who are trying to compete in this area for private rented stock. We have an inability to financially compete with private landlords as well, due to the restrictive local housing allowance rates and the spending power of other local councils. And we also have a lack of larger family-sized dwellings in district. And as such, people that are on our waiting list are having to wait longer for those properties to become available. Yeah, okay. There was also reference to 91 people currently on our homeless people currently on our register, and this is made up of 50 families, 41 singles, and this is the highest number since our records began. Just to try and put that in context, the total number of homeless approaches at the council have remained similar over the last couple of years. So for 21 to 22, there were 650. For 22 to 23, there were 682. For this current financial year, it's currently 448, but we're missing Q4 data, so we're expecting it to be relatively similar. But again, this is due to a lack of properties, but this time both interim accommodation and more settled accommodation. And as such, homeless applicants on our housing register are having to wait longer to access properties. The 20 applicants that are placed outside of district, the furthest away being Peterborough. I do think this is a trend that's developed due to, again, lack of affordable accommodation and interim accommodation in district. Now, our officers have to try and source the most affordable properties wherever they can, and hence the reason why we're having to go further afield. This is unfortunately a trend I think will continue, but we can certainly hope that if affordable housing rates in the district increase, we can reduce it and try and keep more people in our local area. And the last comment, when I reference our contemporaries, and just to try and give you some sort of context, if I look, for example, at Epping Forest, where I was a former employee, Epping Forest has a very large council housing stock. It has land assets, and it's trying to develop all of that. If you go to Epping Forest now, it looks completely different to what it was back in 2008. But it also has a very large housing team. There's over 30 officers there, all working across different areas of the council. This is also the case, but to a slightly different extent, for Castle Point and Brentwood councils, both of which have their own housing stock and land assets and actively try and use them to the benefit. By contrast, we're not a stock holding authority. We rely on housing association partners. We've got extremely limited land assets, but we have got local development occurring. Watchford District Council is probably a similar council to us in terms of their housing setup and the housing team numbers. So while appreciating that all councils have their own challenges, I wouldn't say we're unique, but we do have more than specific challenges that we're trying to overcome. What we do have, and maybe this might sound biased, but I believe we have a very proactive housing team and like-minded officers across the council that are really trying to find innovative housing solutions for the residents. What I would suggest is mentioned the term homeless crisis. I would suggest a more apt term would be a housing crisis, which takes into account all the services that housing provide. Lastly, I would just comment that we do have an active homeless, rough sleeper and housing strategy, which was recently extended to 2025, and that was agreed at Strategy and Resources on the 6th of the 10th, and that underpins the work for various council officers. The current housing strategy contained 42 actions, and we did rate them in the end. What I can tell you is that 17 of those actions are now completed and business as usual. 12 of those are considered amber, and they're part of ongoing discussions and work. 11 of those are considered to be at risk, and there's various reasons for that. And there's 2 that are awaiting grading. So bearing in mind we already have a relevant and active homeless housing strategy, I would suggest happy to work on an addendum to incorporate the new challenges and bring that back to whichever committee members feel fit. And just one more point of assurance, it's not just housing services that try and assist our residents in their hour of need. We've also got the excellent work that the strategic theme lead for community does with the public, private and voluntary sectors. And also we've got the work that the commercial team do in conjunction with the housing team to try and bring forward some of those innovative solutions. So that's just a snapshot of where we are. I hope you found it useful.
Mr. Swords.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members. Damien's obviously given some very good facts and figures, and I don't want to drag this on any longer for members because you've got a lot to get through today. But I just wanted to clarify really a couple of points. Those out of district, it's actually, since those last figures a couple of weeks ago, that's actually gone up now to 23 families now outside of the district. The numbers on the housing register roughly are still the same. With our local housing needs assessment in 2021, the target that they recommended that was set in it was that we needed every year 209 affordable units. This year and last year, for example, last year in total we achieved 109, and this year in total to date we have achieved 123. So you can see, members, that just over the last 2 years we're actually nearly 200 units short on what that is being recommended, which has an impact then on everybody that is homeless or on the housing register. And just last little bits of facts I just wanted to say, because I think this is quite important for members to understand. With regards to the housing register, in bands C up to bands A, so that's high housing need to extreme housing need, we currently have 102 families. 102 in bands C to A. Of those 102, 70 families need a 3-bedroom property. And in this financial year to date, we've only had 16 3-bedroom properties to be able to allocate to them. And we also need, we've got 21 families that need a 4-bedroom property in those bands. And we've not had any 4-bedroom properties this year. In fact, I can't remember the last time we had a 4-bed. I think it was a couple of years back. And we also have one family needs a 5-bed. We only have one 5-bed property in the district that is occupied and has been occupied for some considerable period of time. So just to reiterate really what Damien has said, we are trying in the housing department. It is very difficult. There's lots of factors, as Damien has mentioned, and what we're trying to do is not just deal with those people that are coming in at the front end, but strategically we're trying to look at other options. And the Strategic Housing Board, with members that we meet with on a quarterly basis, they're aware of some of those potential options that we're looking at. And indeed, we're very shortly to hopefully take some reports on options, especially in dealing with temporary accommodation to, I believe it's Strategy and Resources, if we can get all the information in on time for the next meeting. So we're dealing it at the front end, and we're equally trying to deal with it as a bigger picture, across the district long term. But it is very difficult for us. And I've been here 15 years, and I can honestly say it's definitely the hardest I've ever seen in the 15 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Swords. Councillor Stevens.
Thank you. Obviously, for any person who is homeless or about to be homeless, they are having a crisis. But I'm very wary of using the expression crisis. I think if we're going to do that sort of thing, as a council, we need to have some sort of terms of reference around a definition of what is a crisis, what do we do about the crisis, how much budget do we give the crisis. Otherwise, it's just a label, it doesn't make any difference. I don't think it achieves anything in itself. And how long do we keep on going on with this crisis? Do we wait till there are no homeless people before we stop the crisis? I just would want to see something set out in terms of what the labelling it a crisis would achieve. Otherwise, there seems no point in doing that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Holmes. Mr. Holmes. Councillor Stout.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I think we also know there is a national issue here. It's not something we're dealing with at the local level, and there's not a magic answer to this. All the good work that the officers are doing in housing is to address the problem we have. So I do have some concerns about calling it a crisis because, as you say, you need to resolve a crisis, and it's not straightforward because it's a national problem. See it every day, see it in the news. So I think, perhaps we do need to change the language of that. But obviously what the team has outlined to you is the proactive work they're actually doing to give you that level of reassurance. We do have a strategy, and that could be reviewed. I think there's a suggestion that could be added too. So maybe the answer is through the Strategy and Resources Committee, we bring something to strengthen the existing strategy, Chairman.
Councillor Shaughnessy. Councillor Holmes.
Yeah, that's fine.
Thank you, Chairman. I know that the two officers who have spoken are actually working from their heart and not just from their heads. I know that. I've known John Swords for a long time, and I definitely know that. But I also would like to bring everyone down to the wire today because, as a lot of you know, I'm the chair of the Leach Memorial Garden, or chair of Friends of the Leach Memorial Garden, I should say. Apologies. And from time to time, we have had people sleeping rough in there. Now, my posh neighbours have thrown up their hands in horror, but my husband and I actually speak to these people, offer them our facilities if they wish to take that up. I also speak from the heart on this, like John and Damien. And I just wanted to put it out there that my husband and I have actually experienced, speaking to these people in these dire circumstances, and they haven't always been single young men by any means. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Stamp.
Chairman, Councillor Morgan had his hand up before me, so I'll give what he did. You just didn't see him, so I'll give way.
All right, Councillor Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I sort of have to say I fully agree with Councillor Stevens there, and I'm just wondering why we're actually here and the officers have been taken away from their desks to discuss this. Just, as far as my brief experience with the officers is that they're not lost or under any illusion how serious the housing crisis is in this district, and they're doing, as far as I can see, their level best to do it. And to sort of say that we should therefore announce that there's a housing crisis, to my mind, almost seems to suggest that they are somehow falling down on their job, which I think would be a great slur on them. So I'm just really wondering what we're doing. The officers should be allowed to get back to doing the sterling work, which I know they're doing.
They're here today because I've decreed that we have these motions today, and it saves them turning up to an evening meeting. Councillor Stamp.
Yeah, thank you. If we take on board everything Councillor Morgan said at this meeting, then I don't actually think we need to have any members. We just leave everything to the officers, because we are elected to scrutinise and bring motions and areas of concern that we believe as elected members. But Chairman, my question is really, and I've had conversations with John Swords, he's excellent, and so is Damon Gaylor, as everybody said, Chairman. But when all these planning applications are being put forward and the Section 106s are being agreed before the reports are coming to planning, Chairman, why are we not seeing more of the properties we want or we need as a district? Why is it suddenly becoming a shock? Because I don't believe it ever has been a shock. We've had these conversations for months. So why are we not getting these required affordable homes? We're doing 40%. In Burnham and Crouch, we've got loads of affordable homes. Why have we not got 5 bedrooms? Why have we not got 4 bedrooms? There's loads of applications coming forward, so I would actually ask, I'm not blaming you, so please don't see that I am. I'm blaming the authority, if there is, or asking the authority to address the need. And there is a national housing crisis, but I agree with, oh God, Councillor Stevens, I always want to call you Thompson.
No, I do that.
Sorry, but I do, because now it's in my head. But I don't agree it's a crisis, and I think we have to put it in perspective. And I actually applaud Councillor Fluker for raising it, because it's always sat below the radar at this authority. Thank you.
Mr. Swords.
Thank you, Chair. It's just in answer to that, Councillor Stamp. The issue that we're kind of facing now, especially with family sort of accommodation, was back in 2012, 2013, the strategic housing market assessment, as was then, it sort of decreed that we really needed a lot more smaller properties, and that's what we're now seeing coming through on the strategic sites predominantly. But what I'm also doing is, when I'm working with the planning officers now on pre-applications for potential schemes, you know, in the next sort of year or 2 years, 3 years, whatever, this is where I'm now making sure that I'm really trying to force that we're getting bungalows for older people and also more family housing. That's what I'm trying to ensure. And we do now have the local housing needs assessment of 2021 that equally says a greater proportion of larger family homes, especially 4 beds, where we've now got a figure of up to 10% on that sort of matter.
I was going to say that. Blame the Secretary of State's LDP.
Councillor White.
Seriousness, that's what I was referring to, because we did know as councillors, Chairman, that those properties weren't needed, and when those properties came up for 1 and 2 bedrooms, we knew they weren't needed, because you had other sites, strategic sites, that was developing and building them out, Chairman.
But 12 years ago, or 10 or 11 years ago, the market was a different market.
Councillor White.
Councillor White.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, first of all, I'd like to put forward a slight amendment because, and I'll go into why before I give it. Now, I obviously knows Chair Strategy and Resources, and the members who've proposed this actually sit on my committee. And what I don't quite understand is that Strategy and Resources, we've done an awful lot of work on a homeless strategy, and this motion almost suggests that we've done nothing. We've worked really closely with the 2 officers here who speak from their heart and are doing everything they can, and we've been trying to think of so many ways of housing people. But this is a national issue. This is not just a Malden issue. And in fact, we're doing better than a lot of authorities in that we don't really have homeless. We have people in temporary housing. It's not ideal and it's not what we want. But we need to bring the difference between homeless and temporary housing. We have a very tiny amount of homeless. This is sounding like we have hundreds of homeless people. But what I'm saying is, what I don't understand is, and you sit on Strategy and Resources, we've had confidential reports come to the committee outlining proposals that we have in the pipeline absolutely to resolve this issue. And we've put a lot of resource into it. There's continued resource coming into it. And I'm actually really excited about the project, the main one I'm thinking of, but I can't mention it now because it's confidential. So what I think we should be doing is we should be inviting all members to the Strategy Resources, particularly the ones who are already on there, and maybe they've missed this exciting proposal, and perhaps we can have this proposal come up, and I'll invite all members to this meeting so you can see what it is. There's no point in bringing it to the next full council because we won't be able to discuss it because it has to be in private and confidential. So trust me, we are working really, really hard on the homeless. We are working really, really hard to provide more of our own housing. And if this proposal comes to being, it could well build many, many homes. And I hope we'll be in a home surplus rather than a homes deficit like every other authority in the country is. So my amendment is that we continue with the review that we're already undertaking, and then it comes to the next strategy and resources in private and confidential, and I'll phone every single member on this council to try and insist that they attend so they can actually find out what we are doing, because we are working really, really hard. And this motion suggests that members and the officers are doing nothing to resolve this issue. So my amendment is as it comes to strategy and resources. Well, that's how I'm reading it. That's how I'm reading it.
Councillor Hull.
Councillor Hull.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for letting me speak. I don't know if you know, but I take a lot of these people on around the farm, and what I find, it's really hard because they are going through crisis, and it's really hard to keep them on the straight and narrow. But I don't know, a lot of it's private and confidential what Sue's going through. But if you want some ideas I had to make it easier for the people that are in private rented, because what you find if you get somebody in private rented, they abuse the place or they don't pay the rent, you can't get them out. So people aren't willing to put their private homes up for rent or invest in renting. So I just wondered if there's any way we could make it easier. So if they don't pay their rent, or if they do wreck the place, they get help, or we can help somehow. And the second one, I've got an Australian staying with me at the moment, and what she's saying in their country, with their part of the country where she is in Queensland, they use these containers and make them into houses just as temporary. One, they're well insulated, they're easy to put up, to move, they're not expensive. I don't know, with some of the local farmers or even some of the churches, if you could say, could we put one on your, and help that in a temporary way. Also, we've got the big problem, a lot of these houses that people have split up. So instead of having one house, they've all want two houses. We've got one young girl that's gone into a lovely home just in the new houses just coming into Malden. Somehow they've all got damp, so they've all had to be moved out of there. So that's, she said there was about 3 or 4 of them all in the same situation. I don't know why that is, but she's been looked after now, but she had to have many weeks in accommodation. But then that was the same, she split up with her husband, they've both got 2 houses instead of one, and that's quite a lot to deal with. So I don't know, we just need some ideas really, because I'd be willing to put some containers up, and I'm sure other people would.
This isn't new. I remember 30 years ago when there was a proposal to deal with homeless issues. A particular councillor actually died just there during a council meeting. No, in front of you. And I won't say what the proposal was at that time, but it was similar to the Australian option.
So we've got Councillor Stilts, but Councillor Fluker wants to put an amendment forward. Let him go.
Yeah, Councillor Fluker, you want to make an amendment, did you
Yeah,
say?
thank you, Chairman. But before I do, I refer Councillor White to the first paragraph of my preamble, and I look forward to her apology. And Chairman, I've never ever questioned what Mr. Saul's done. I've known him ever since I've come here, and if anybody needs commending, it's him and his department and Mr. Gaylor and the previous Mr. Gaylor, who I referred to earlier. And what we need to do is to get this council right behind you. Now, clearly everybody here now is quite passionate about doing that, but there's 15 members, I think, that aren't here tonight or this afternoon or this morning who really need to be aware of what you're doing. And then they'll get behind you and hopefully give you the support that you need. Chairman, I propose that an amendment to my motion insofar as, Chairman, that at its meeting of today, Council resolves to agree that at a future meeting of Council, the corporate leadership team presents an updated strategy strategy to reduce homelessness in the district. I think that's what the officers have already alluded to and agreed to, and I think that's what Mr. Holmes has as well. So I think that amendment sits well and allows us to move on.
And is that seconded?
Thank you, Mr.
Councillor White seconded it. And Councillor Stilts.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was going to ask Mr. Sauls a question, and that is, we sat at a pre-app the other day, and when you look at the pre-apps, most of them stop at 4-bedroom houses. If we know that we need 5-bedroom houses, why are we not asking these developers to put bigger houses into their thing for that? And also, when they come forward with affordable housing for us, are we actually saying to them, we need X number for our residents, rather than then letting them go to other people, other authorities? Yeah.
I know Mr. Swords has got that well tied up. Mr. Swords.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, councillors. So just on the second point, yes, obviously we make sure through our legal agreements on those schemes that we have first lets 100% nomination rights. And in fact, on a lot of schemes, we're now actually, I've been working very closely with Mr. Quelch, we're actually trying to enforce and ensure that in perpetuity, that we always have those lets for residents in the district. It does become obviously a matter of negotiation once the housing associations get on board, because they too would like to work with us, because they want to try and use these properties as well for urgent management moves, and we understand that and we try to work with them on that basis as well. But generally that's what we're trying to do with regards to the actual legal planning document 106 on nominations. And the first one, I think, was the 5-bed, wasn't it? The 5-bed properties. Yes, we do try to look and we do try to ask. We have to be careful when we're looking at 5-bedroom properties, because a lot of our residents, it's all around the issues of local housing allowance. And what we try to ensure is that if we do look at a large property, 4-bed for example, that it's let as a social rent property. The issues that come into play there are between then the housing association and the developer when they are negotiating with all of the housing associations, because they're looking at price. And the issues that you've got there is the fact that as an affordable rent property, a housing association can charge a higher rent than they can for a social rent property. But for a social rent property, the ones that we want, that helps people that are on low incomes and low benefits. On benefits. So what we tend to try and do is, if we do ask, and we have asked and we are getting some 4-bedroomed properties through, we make sure under what we call national design space standards that the developer builds to that level and that size, so that we're looking at 4-bedroomed 7-person properties where possible, so that we can accommodate a family that needs a 5-bed into a 4-bed 7 if they're large double rooms. That's how we try to do it, because the danger is if we ask for a 5-bed and then later down the line the housing association says we can't charge social rent on it, we can only charge affordable rents, then the problem is it's excluding a lot of people on our housing register, and that's not really the point and purpose of what we're trying to do. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lord. Councillor Fluker, in your amendment, are you also removing the word crisis, which seems to upset one or two members?
That was
yes.
Chairman. That was the first thing my friend to the left crossed out for me. Thank you.
Councillor Lagan.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be quite brief. And I've learned a lot. That really have, and thank you very much indeed. I think one thing I've learned is that time changes need, doesn't it, from and what's needed back then into now. And with the LDP review going on, I think it's a key indicator. It certainly gives me something to think about. Should I stand and be re-elected? We've talked about a lot of officers, and I've not noted down here, we don't have bad officers, we just have bad systems. I think working within the systems and the constraints that we have really does show that the work that's being done, despite all the constraints that we have, or that you have, let's be honest, and that you have, is remarkable. So I just want to say thank you from me, and thank you to actually Councillor Fluker for bringing this forward, because it's something that I need to get more up to speed with, and I've, as I said, I've learned an awful lot today, and I appreciate that.
Leader, penultimate speech, please.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I don't think I need to go over all the grounds that the officers have said, but I would say I think Mr Holmes has made it clear about the housing team and how something there will perhaps indicate resources are required. I think we've heard from Mr Gaylor and Mr Swords what's going on. I'd just like to add that to it. They are a very hard-working team. They are a small team, but they are highly dedicated. And I think one of the issues, of course, is we are a non-stock holding authority. So that initially places us on an area which is not so easy to work in. We haven't got our housing ourselves, and that disappeared about over 28 years ago. What I would like to say, and bring into the equation, because I do think it needs to be mentioned as well, we're very good in terms of our initiatives to do with rough sleeping. In fact, we're working in partnership there, and we did get an award, and I think that needs to be mentioned as well, because there's another facet to the team going on. Regarding Councillor Stevens, I'm grateful to her, and Councillor Fluken's listened, because you've stopped, by you saying that, as indicated, I think you're absolutely right in what you said in terms of crisis, and that wording should not be applied. Regarding Councillor Stamp, she's correct, I've said that before, about the bedrooms, in terms of we've got to think of families. Not everyone wants a 1 or 2 bedroom property, and that's we've heard from the officers regarding that issue. Regarding the Strategic Housing Board, and Councillor Stevens will know this because she sits on with me, and there are some initiatives being considered there, and as the officer said, there will be a report going, and I believe that is going to strategy and resources in the not too far distant future. So there are initiatives being considered. And what I would like to say, it's not just about the situation the officers are in now, in when people are homeless, it's actually there's a tremendous lot of work that is applied through that very small team to prevention of homelessness, and that's a very important aspect of the service. If you can prevent homelessness occurring, that saves you having greater problems down the road. So I would like to say thank you for all you're doing in that aspect, because that's a primary task of that housing team as well. And so, Chairman, I do leave it there, Chairman. Thank you very much. So we've got reports going, the addendum that's been applied to the homelessness and housing strategy that's already gone through SNR, and we're hearing what Mr Holmes said. So I think we're covering actually off the issues that Councillor Fluker has raised, and I'm sure we'll agree, receive those reports with interest. Thank you.
I think, yes, it's for Councillor Fluker to sum up now, but I believe actually his motion has been achieved. If he has a report come back to a future council that will come back via SNR. Anyway, Councillor Fluker.
Chairman, that's definitely not what I was proposing, Chairman,
right,
because I think,
okay.
Look, Chairman, think about the corporate plan and how quickly we move that forward. We're tootling off to strategy and resources with a well-debated and well-rehearsed argument, and stopping these guys getting on with it, getting some more resources to them and moving this all forward. So, Chairman, my proposal, my amended motion is on the table, and I so move, Chairman.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Then again, Councillor White.
I thought I seconded it,
Yes,
going
you did.
to strategy and resources, and everybody could see the confidential report.
No.
But if it's at any future meeting, it doesn't have to be the next council, because this can't be pulled together overnight. It's not as simple as the corporate plan was.
That was the point I was making. Councillor Fluker.
Sorry, Chairman.
Amended motion was for a future council meeting, which will come via SNR. Which will come via SNR. Anyway, those in favour.
No, it's not via SNR.
My motion is, Chairman, still it goes to council, it goes direct to council. You don't need to waste 6 weeks in the committee system. It goes straight to council. The officers have got everything they want from full council. So, let's bring that report forward within the terms, Chairman, and I think it's clear the passion of what this motion means to everybody. Thank you.
Well, that's that. There you are, members. I'll put that motion to the vote. Those in favour.
I think there was a question of Councillor White, so she was seconding something different.
No, but she accepted, I think. Yeah.
If I might come in, as long as it doesn't have to be at the next meeting, it can be a future one, because a lot of this isn't in place.
Is a future meeting. Yeah. Those in favour, please show. Somebody count. Yeah. Well, those against. One. Oh, that's interesting. That motion is carried, and it is now 25 to 1. I adjourn the meeting
Chairman, point of order, please. Chairman, I presume you're going to adjourn for lunch. Chairman, if it is your intention to adjourn for lunch, Chairman, I'd ask you to adjourn this meeting sine die. I can't stay in this meeting any longer. I've got work commitments, Chairman, and there are members listening on YouTube, I think, is it YouTube or something like that, at the moment, who, I won't say they're concerned, but they're interested to hear what you've decided today. Personally, I think this has been a really good exercise. You know, we've spent a lot of time discussing these motions, and I think there's a lot of things coming up.
I'm very pleased with what's
Chairman,
happening.
So am I, but you know, I was very much against coming today, and I've had so, Chairman, I hate using that word.
But I'm not going to adjourn sine die.
Chairman, no, if that is the case, Chairman, if that's the case, Chairman,
Councillor Spenceley
under Rule 4.2, I am going to withdraw all of my motions. Then, thank you.
Thank you. Does that just leave Councillor Spenceley's one?
Well, then there's one in confidential.
Oh, there's one in confidential. No, I'm adjourning for an hour. Yeah, this meeting's adjourned until 22:02.